Freen and Becky. A story written in moments, not words. Some connections are loud, dramatic, and obvious from the start. But not theirs. Freen and Becky's story was never built on grand declarations or big romantic lines. It was built quietly, in glances exchanged when no one else was watching, in soft laughter between rehearsals, and in small gestures so natural that even the cameras struggled to capture their meaning. Their bond grew not through what they said, but through the silence that held everything they couldn't put into words. This is why their story feels different. Not because they're famous, not because they're co-stars, but because every moment between them feels like a line in a book nature itself wrote. A story of two souls who found each other long before they even realized it. The first connection. A look that didn't need dialogue. What makes their beginning unforgettable is how ordinary it was. No dramatic background music. No slow-motion scene. Just a simple moment in a rehearsal room. Becky was flipping through her script, her eyebrows slightly furrowed in concentration. Freen walked in and paused for half a second, long enough for a spark to form, but short enough for both of them to pretend they didn't feel it. Becky looked up. Their eyes met. It was a single, quiet second. But in that second, Freen's smile softened, almost involuntarily. Becky's expression calmed, like she recognized something familiar. A something shifted, subtle but unmistakable. Before either of them spoke, something invisible passed between them. You seem like someone I will care about. And you feel like someone I can trust. That moment, that one look, became the seed of everything that followed. Growing closer without realizing it. People often expect relationships to grow through dramatic events. But Freen and Becky's grew through the small, unnoticed things. Becky always scooting her chair slightly closer to Freen. Freen reaching out to remove lint from Becky's shirt. Becky leaning into Freen's side when she laughed. Freen watching Becky speak with those soft, attentive eyes. They weren't trying to build a bond. They were just being themselves. But in being themselves, together, a bond formed anyway. They didn't rush it. They didn't force it. They simply let it happen. And that's what made it real. When cameras rolled, and they forgot. What made the world notice them wasn't the scenes they acted. It was the moments they weren't supposed to be acting at all. Behind-the-scenes clips, interviews, fan meetings. All full of tiny instances where they slipped out of co-star mode and into something more honest. There were moments like Becky leaning her head on Freen's shoulder out of habit. Freen fixing Becky's mic cord without being asked. The way their eyes lingered just a heartbeat too long. The way they whispered to each other like the room was empty. Those small smiles that only belonged to the two of them. These were the moments fans replayed over and over. Not because they were dramatic, but because they were true. A bond based on reflexes, not rehearsal. There's something unique about people who grow close naturally. They begin to respond to each other without thinking. And that's exactly what happened with them. Their connection became instinctual. Freen always noticing when Becky was overwhelmed. Becky always sensing when Freen needed reassurance. Freen stepping in front of Becky during chaotic crowds. Becky placing her hand on Freen's arm when she was nervous. They didn't have to plan it. They didn't have to talk about it. Just happened. And everyone could see it. How they communicated without speaking. If you watch enough clips of them, you'll notice something unusual. They often communicate through eyes alone. A glance. Tiny smile. A raised eyebrow. Soft nod. And suddenly they understand each other perfectly. It's the kind of nonverbal communication that only exists between people who trust each other deeply, observe each other closely, feel safe together, genuinely care. This is why fans often say, they don't talk, they telepath. And it's true, their bond is built on a language only they share. Their quiet understanding. Something rare and precious. One of the most beautiful things about their connection is how they make space for each other emotionally. Becky's personality is soft, expressive, warm. Freen's personality is calm, composed, thoughtful. Instead of clashing, they balance each other. When Becky is nervous, Freen becomes her anchor. When Freen is quiet, Becky becomes her sunshine. When Becky rambles, Freen listens with patience. When Freen gets serious, Becky softens her mood. They don't try to change each other. They simply fit together, like puzzle pieces that were always meant to align. Why the world connected to their story? Perhaps the most magical thing about Freen and Becky is that their bond doesn't need translation. People from all over the world, even those who don't speak Thai, feel it instantly. Because love isn't a line in a script. It isn't a scene in a drama. It's the energy between two people. The softness in a glance. The quiet care in small gestures. The way someone's presence makes everything lighter. Freen and Becky show all of this without ever trying. That's why people who have never watched Gap still fall in love with their dynamic. Because what they share doesn't belong to a fandom. It belongs to human connection. A story still being written, moment by moment. Their story isn't defined by the label co-stars. It isn't limited to the roles they played. It's defined by the comfort they bring each other, the affection in their laughter, the understanding in their silence, the trust in their gestures, the growth they inspired in each other. And the most beautiful part, their story is still unfolding. Not through dramatic twists, not through public announcements, not through scripted scenes, but through moments that build something deeper, softer, and more timeless than words ever could. Because some connections aren't spoken into existence, they're felt into existence. And Freen and Becky's story is one of those.